on Friday was the reason behind it, because on Friday I there was some news out of China, out of America actually, that they were going to curb companies being able to invest in China, to
Yeah.
buy Chinese companies. So, and that really did affect the market really negatively. Um,
Seems to have been a hollow statement at this point.
well,
Wouldn't you say that? I don't know.
it could be that. It might be that, or it might be that. It might be that, or it might be just the fact that it hasn't happened yet. There was somebody on Saturday that kind of came out and curbed that. So yeah, I guess there's reasons to be cheerful if you like, but I'm still kind of like I'm still bearish. Is there's
Hmm.
we've had a fairly good positive reaction, gap to the upside, as you can see there. There's a gap to the upside. The big question is what to do now. Gap to the upside, a pullback to the maybe it's a longer term flag even. When we look at this on a 4 hour, it kind of looks like a little bull flag there.
Yep.
Break out of the flag and a pullback back to the flag, and are good to go. And I suppose that is a setup for a long. I'm a little bit cautious here. I've got to be a little bit cautious here. I just look at this market and think that it might be getting maybe a little bit close to a bit more uncertainty, and I think it's certainly kind of the longer term timeframes that suggest that to me. When I look at this on a weekly chart here, I've still got this head and shoulders looming large. I've now tested the area that was just waiting to be tested. On Friday we tested this area, or even maybe Thursday. We've tested the area now, so we're almost good to go now to the downside. So there might be a little bit more upside in this, but I'm still not too sure whether there's going to be enough confidence out there. I do have to take into account, however, that the defensive play here. Let's just watch the open very, very quickly and see what's suggested here.
Mm-hmm.
It might be worth taking a long, to be honest, just for a bit of protection. But I've just got my doubts. Just got my doubts about it. Probably completely unfounded, but what I'll probably do, I might let this one pass. We're not that far away from the high here. If we get up to the high and break through, then I'll take some sort of protection and I'll take a long. I have got a short on, as I said. I've taken the lines away, but I've got a short on. So I'll take some protection up here. The gap between this point and this point, even though I think it's probably likely, it's likely to be filled, I'm not going to trade it. It's a little bit. I think it's going to be a little bit too manic. So let's see if it breaks. If we get a decent break to the upside, then I'll trade it. If not, then I'm going to sit out for a little while and see if I can and get some sort of development on it.
Last day of September. Any bearing, do you think?
Yeah. Undoubtedly, yeah. There's always a bearing when a bar's about to close. So yes, that will play a part, and I suppose that's another reason that it might be worth being a little bit patient today and letting the picture unfold a little bit rather than just jumping straight in, which I would not. To be fair, I took a short on Thursday. I took a short, and I took a short off the back of this coming up here and coming down, and I took a short round here. But when on Friday we had a Bank of England governor coming out and saying that there was a good chance that no matter what kind of Brexit deal the UK get, the pound will likely have to take an interest rate cut. I protected it with a long, and I had to do it fairly fast because it was on the move. This was the 8 o'clock bar, and I had to do it fairly fast. But I managed to get it on. I didn't get right at the bottom of the candle. Got 4 accounts currently I'm trying to kind of manage. So, they all kind of like got a slightly different price, but it was okay. But it was getting, that was okay on Friday, because even with that long, if it started to go against me, then I've at least got another day potentially to manage it. But that is my slight concern here. If I start managing this too early and going in long, and as you say, end of the month might actually result in a bit of choppiness, and then all of a sudden we just start to dive to the downside, then I don't really want to be caught on that. So that's one of the reasons I'm just going to sit back. But I will take a protection. If we go through this area here, I will take some protection. But before that, I'm okay. I think, just to kind of like wait and see if it can hold this area. Because I think if it holds this area, then it's more likely to drift out. And the reason for that is that we've had Donald Trump coming out, or we had the White House reporting that they were potentially curbing Chinese assets, curbing American companies taking Chinese assets. But then a Treasury spokesman on Saturday said there was no plans for that to happen just yet. So I suppose the negativity caused this bar, and the positivity has really sort of like, given us some fairly solid price action to the upside so far. But does that mean it's just going to take off on that, or does that mean that that the trade war has still got some yards to run and we fluctuate a little bit? Because if that's the case, I think we eventually fluctuate to the downside, because I don't see the trade war being a positive, and I don't see or I don't hear Trump really rowing back on anything. There's all the rowing back seems to have come from the Chinese side, and there's going to be a point where they're going to get fed up with that. So I don't see that Trump rows back on China, but even more maybe to the point, he seems to now be trying to involve Europe as well. So I think there's a decent chance of some negativity, and that's why I just want to hold on as long as I possibly can. Even if I'm wrong, and we start to take off to the upside, I'm still going to hold on as long as I can, because what I'd quite like to do is see where these areas eventually work out, because this is a heavy area we need to get through here, and I think it's going to take something maybe more than just a Treasury spokesman coming out and saying no, there's no plans to do that just yet, because that still sounds fairly negative. Not yet, but eventually. So it's got some work to do, I think, to get through a fairly strong level of resistance. And if it does do that, then I think it climbs the wall of worry anyway. But where would be my next target? And I think I'd be hard pushed to say that it was all the way up there. A break to the upside is going to be tricky to manage. So I may even end up having to just sit and wait and see, a very last minute take a hedge if I absolutely need to. Otherwise, just sweat it out for a bit.
The monthly bar is, pardon me, still dominantly bearish, and we've tried very hard. Well, it looks like it's tried very hard to make up that ground during the month. Failed to do so. Is that also part of your plan, because it's not overridden it or engulfed it at this point?
You mean this bar here?
Yeah. Well, this month's bar, yeah. It hasn't been able to counter the previous month's bar. Well, and we got one day to go.
Yeah, no, yes, it does. I think because it could actually end up engulfing it by the end of today. That's the price action that we've seen recently. It's been crazy, some of the price action. So it could end up doing that. But the bigger thing for me is the pattern. Like, this is a diamond formation, or you could argue it's a head and shoulders. But either way, it's the distribution pattern. There's a lot of negativity in this particular pattern. So
you've got a lower high and a lower low as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more we'd need, really. I mean, the fact that it's on a monthly chart, I suppose, means that it's like a huge tanker trying to turn. But
you wouldn't be expecting that most recent high to go on the look of that chart. I would.
No, you wouldn't. And you know what? The other aspect of this is that this particular bar here, this shooting star, is on a shorter term time frame one of my favorite places to try and enter after it's broken down and returned. I really like the return, or, you know, when we see these bars return, and I'll show you you know, an example of that. When this bar here, you know, it took off on that one, so there was no opportunity. But let's see. This would have been
an example. About this last week, and we said that looked particularly bullish, did we not?
Yeah, here it was here. Yes, and yeah, exactly, mate. And look, and this is maybe the other aspect of this. This is fairly parabolic. You know, it's not a gentle kind of like clean move to the upside. It's fairly parabolic. You know, that's what we're caged in right now. And these parabolic moves are more likely to be under pressure than not. So that's another reason that I'm quite happy just to hold on to these shorts and see if this breaks down. Now, the other thing is here that there is a head and shoulders pattern here as well, and I don't particularly like these ones, but that is another head and shoulders currently. Might be better to do it on some lines instead. Let's do it on this instead. Actually, let's use this.
Yeah, it's very close to the reverse of what we saw last week. Very, very close.
Yeah,
it's a little bit sharper, maybe.
It's a bit sharp. Yeah, it's a bit sharp. But that is, you know, that's the left shoulder. There's the head, and here's the right shoulder. So, you know, I don't like it when the right shoulder is so high. It's much better, much better if you're looking at the head and shoulder. It's much better if you kind of like, you know, if the right shoulder is going to be slightly different than the left, you kind of want it like that, because it shows that, you know, it's even more bearish when it's sort of like angling down like that. But, you know, it is there. So there's suggestion from these patterns that's going to happen. And as I say, I like that bar. Now, I was going to find an example, but maybe, you know, being kind of caught slightly looking for a bar in the wilderness might be a little bit tricky. But they do
I've
arise.
had to do that a few times in my life.
What's that? Look for a
when
bar.
I was thirsty. Look for a bar in the wilderness.
This isn't a bad example of it. You know, you've got a shooting star here. The price breaks to the downside, and when it kind of returns back up again, then this area still becomes an area of interest. The only thing with this is that it's not that clean. I like the kind of 1, 2, 3 aspect that we
ABC. It's very much a case of best case scenarios when we're looking for reversals, really, isn't it? Let that consolidation area break, then the retest is a really nice place to look for an entry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, you see this, or you know, it's much more likely to see this on a 5-minute chart than or a 15 than the hourly. You know, for more than one reason, I suppose. But I do like it, as I say. I do like it as a potential area to take the short. So the long and the short of it is that I'm happy to wait right now. I mean, that's, you know, look at that 5 minutes that we opened with. That's pretty volatile, isn't it? You know,
good.
Yeah, and it does suggest some downside. So I'm okay to hold right now. So let's wait this one out and see what happens, and then we'll just come back to it. We'll just come back to it.
So if anybody who is watching is not in this, should they consider it?
I think so.
And if so, where?
Well, if you're looking to trade this now, why not wait for this 15-minute bar to complete and see if it ends up at the lower end of it? You know, an entry at the lower end of this bar would be a good place. Stop at the high, and I think the stop at the high is fine, because what we seem to have, actually, you know what? I wouldn't just put the stop at the high. This is too close. I'd put the stop a couple of pips above this high instead, because it's negligible how close this is price wise, and it could break through this point and still get rejected at the line. So I'd put my stop at a few pips above this line. Entry at the low of this bar would be a great place to try as well, and then see what happens. You could obviously put it at the low end of. Actually, let's just double check that for pivots, because I think there is a pivot down here. Yeah, the entry of the low of that bar is still okay. The entry of the low of that bar would still be fine. So stop at the high of this bar here, entry at the low of this bar here, and then see what happens. And I think that would be a fairly decent trade. And you don't need to put a lot on this, because it's got such a long way to travel that you could go in very, very light. And then if it does start to break down, then you can start to add. Yeah, exactly. Build it up. Put the stops. If it breaks the daily pivot, stops at entry, and then try and take it on the retest of the daily pivot again. And for another trade, breaks down the weekly pivot, the same thing can happen. So you can really build into this one. I wouldn't go all in. I haven't gone all in. I've gone in. I have got a couple of trades on. So I've gone in light because I went in on Thursday, as I said. Kept the trade on. When it took off on Friday, I put a trade on long just to kind of mitigate some of the loss on the trade to the downside. I went back in again after hearing the news on China on Friday to the downside, and I also had a fairly nice entry signal on my RSI. This is one of the ways that I use the RSI. When this starts to break down, these humps here, when they start to break down, so I had a break to the downside. So that was another reason I took the short as well. That the trend line was broken down. So yeah, just holding on to that one now, mate. So yeah, I think people could trade that to the downside. The biggest the difficulty is probably to do with gold more than anything else. Maybe the pound as well isn't able to catch a bid, which is going to be a little bit tricky. But when we look at gold was something we discussed in the show last week, wasn't it, with Julian? And we were talking about
the show last week. I think I was, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about this.
Always a conversation about gold.
Well, this one was intriguing me because it was a head and shoulders pattern. I think this is pretty clean, and what I quite like about this head and shoulders pattern as well is that it gives you an entry point to try and get into. But you can see here. Let me just pick out my tool here. So obviously there's the neckline down there, left shoulder, there's the head up there, and there's the right shoulder. But what's really good about this one is this line here, because this line not only is the top of the shoulder, but it also gives you an entry right on the peak of the right shoulder. So and you'd ignore that one because it is not far out enough. That's not time wise. That's not long enough to establish the right shoulder. But this one, I think that's a really, really good entry, and a really, really positive signal. So the one good thing about this is that we are on the neckline, and we know that necklines tend to hold. They're more likely to hold than break. So I need this one to hold really for my FTSE trade to work out, I suspect.
Okie dokie. Well, one day I'm going to place a trade on gold. Never ever have.
No, I think it's a bit of a difficult beast, gold. If I'm honest, I don't like the fractions that the kind of jiggery pokery you have to do to kind of work out how much you have to put on it. I think obviously you get used to that as you go, but it can be a bit of a tricky beast.
Might be a question for Barley, for the master of gold trading, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about that. So yeah, there's another topic. I'll just write that in my little Funkin' Wagnall, and bring it up with him when the time's right. Mate, I noticed Bitcoin's down 36% this quarter.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because not being a huge kind of trader of Bitcoin, it's not massively on my radar. But yes, I have been watching this, and whoa! I mean, people are just getting ripped up again with Bitcoin. The same. I suppose in a kind of in a micro, it's almost like a microcosm of what happened on the bigger kind of picture a year or so ago. Because again, the same thing, huge. It surged to the upside, finds itself a double top up here, and or an M topping pattern, if you like, and then all of a sudden, just when it gives way, it really starts to give way and hit down hard. So yeah, I mean, crazy moves in Bitcoin yet again, down, as you say, from the highs. What did you say? 36%.
Yeah. Well, this quarter.
This quarter,
which includes off the high, absolutely off the high.
Yeah.
So if you have a look at that chart that you just set up, that's Jesus, some nice entries there. You know exactly what you've just been talking about. See the double top, then you've got that lower high. That one there. Gee, that's a good entry.
Yes, it is. It is a pretty good entry. Let's have a look at what the trend line was suggesting there as well. A little bit tricky on that one, but this one is pretty tight there.
If you have a look at the resistance one that came up through the gap on, or the bottom of, well, the lower gap, if you like, on the 10th of June, there's a trend line going up through there. That's probably a nice retest of that.
This one up here. Yeah.
No. There's a little.
This one here?
Spinning top, two up. Next one. Or you can, next one up. No, sorry, next candle up, but there.
This one here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it?
And throw that also up through the low after the high, after the extreme high.
The low, this one, yeah.
That one.
Oh, yeah. I see.
Not as good as I thought it might have been. Okay.
No, it's pretty close. This but the pattern. What a beauty, you know, the sort of, you'd probably be taking this one and this one as trades, because if you got these first two holding down, you get this one, you get this one, but this one is brilliant, isn't it? You get these and these, and you know, when the squeeze comes, let's just double check the measured move on this, because this might tell us how low this is going.
It's a big one.
Yeah, it's huge, right back to the lows.
Jesus.
Back to 4,000, if you like, for Bitcoin. So the pain with this one continues. Interesting, actually. My brother was telling me he's after he's got all his cryptocurrencies, he went and bought some Bitcoin, and then this started to happen. So he's not having the best run of it.
I hope it was April and not in July.
Oh, I think it was fairly recently.
Oh,
but yeah, he's not having the best run with his cryptocurrencies. He's there's case in point. People should not get involved in trading if they don't know what they're doing. It can be a very, very dangerous place to be.
But there are some nice technicals there. Never
there are, mate. Interesting, really, when it comes down to trading. I don't think a lot of it is down to the technicals. It's understanding the psychology as much as anything else. You've got to know the psychology of your charts and trading.
Yeah, and what's driving this beast? Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I've got another friend who's heavily into the euro, and I was talking to him the other day. And long, I'm talking about, no, not just trading it. He has traded it a lot, but he's trading it long. And I was talking to him the other day before the break happened, and I was saying sometimes, you know what, it's better just to cut your losses and just go again, because at least you can get on the other side of it.
Just show him that monthly bar or weekly bar and monthly bar from.
Yeah.
That just killed it for me. There was no way this was going long.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, there's no way I was going to trade this long after that bar.
Yeah. Well,
it's
that's
not so much the bar itself; it's what it broke. It broke long-term support.
Yes.
And not horizontal support. It was a channel that it broke, and that sealed it for me.
It is difficult to make the case now, isn't it, for Bitcoin? Very difficult to make the case. So that's where I am at, mate. I'm just sitting on my hands, and I think right now I probably need. Let's just quickly wander back to the FTSE, because the FTSE is continuing to grind itself higher at the minute. I might have to take the protection, but I'm just going to wait for this area up here. But it looks to me like I might have to be listening out for some news or data which could bring this down. But you can see, just off the back of this, the divergence as well. There's a high here, probably equal area on the RSI at this point, while price makes a higher high, and then the divergence is starting to show. So what this is saying is that the momentum to the upside is just starting to weaken a little bit. Now that isn't a signal by any account to take a trade short in isolation, but it is quite a useful signal to utilize. And again, we come back to the potential entry. Nobody that's would have been involved just yet is in any bother, and you can still just leave your order in place. I wouldn't worry too much about this price action, because if it takes off, it's not going to trigger you in any way. But leave that order in place, because this is looking better. If in some respects now, if this starts to break down, it's going to start looking a lot more negative. The more it tests these highs and fails, the more likely it is these stops will be protected. So I would be leaving that order to short this one in place, and seeing what happens. 15 also in overbought territory. So let's just wait and see, mate. But it's grinding its way higher. I think we might need something just to help us out a little bit. Is any data today? We did have some data today, didn't we, on China?
Mate, to be fairly frank, I haven't had a look. I don't tend to look at the charts until this time of day, and we have had some Kiwi news. We've had some Chinese news, yes, which was pretty much line ball.
This PMI data, and actually it was pretty good, wasn't it?
It was not too bad.
I mean, it did start to. In fact, that's a fairly decent takeoff. I think this was a number that people were watching because they were concerned. There's some PMIs, manufacturing PMI slightly better than forecast, and slightly better than previous as well. Still in the doldrums, but slightly better. So that was pretty good. The Caixin manufacturing PMI better than expected, and better than previous as well. So actually, okay numbers from China today. Current account is not going to make much difference. Chicago PMI, probably won't do a lot. So we don't have a lot in the way of data that is going to move the market. It might well be a headline that we're waiting for that's going to move this one today for us.
Well, there's certainly a few of those about the place. I lose track of them, to be fair, where we're up to in terms of Donald Trump and tweeting and China trade deals and oil strikes and goodness knows what else is going on. I find it very difficult to keep up with the tweets.
Well, we got Europe and we got Draghi as well leaving, haven't we?
Yep.
And Brexit. Mustn't forget.
And it's the end of the month. Not my favourite time to trade is end of month and Monday, but that combination of two things actually really not my favourites. But I'll take a look and see what I can see. Actually, I do see some really clean charts, which is cool.
Yeah, it's funny actually because, and this is I think we were talking not too long ago about. I was saying that I find that the middle of the month kind of tricky because it gets a bit rangy, and the last weeks of the month tend to be my favourite. These are my favourite times to trade because of it seems more likely to kind of give me something a bit more vicious, which I quite fancy.
Well, we'll start with the euro, and we spoke a little bit about the euro, and as I said and have been saying for weeks, this candle was the one that sealed the deal for me. This was going to always be a no long situation. Having said that, I tried to take a long on a 30-minute chart last Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember what. It failed. It didn't cost me anything because I closed the trade before it went down, but more fooled me, I suppose, going against my bias. The interesting part here is that we are still at a support level, haven't been able to smash through it yet. So there's no close there on the weekly chart last week. That really suggests that we're going to tank, and I don't know that we'll do that before the end of the month anyway. And what data we're waiting on is probably something I can't answer either. So when does this go, if it's going to go? Great question. I don't know. I can see this trend line through here that may cop another test before we're finished. So we may be bouncing off that. There's a confluence area there from the previous range and that trend line. So don't know that. Well, in fact, I certainly won't jump into this short right now. That's so signed, sealed, and delivered. I won't be doing that. But what I would like to see is price get back to that area there, which is around about what 110.70 or something like that. Not even that far. Probably in this vicinity here, 110.30 odd. So that's probably where I'd like to see this get to. Whether it will or not is another story, but on this daily chart, you can see that we've had that breakdown and we've had a retest of those lows. So despite the fact that the weekly and monthly charts are telling us that this hasn't been broken, if you just sneak in a little bit on time frames, you can see that it actually has. But as I said, I won't be looking to trade this short right now, despite the fact that that is in place. Why am I actually doing that? That's a good question. Let me draw that line on the chart. I'm now reconsidering what I've just said. I need to be clear on where the next daily support level is. So I have to go really, I suppose it's at the bottom of that bar, isn't it? Which will coincide with here and here. So let's put that line on the chart. Yeah, it's all in the one spot, isn't it? So let's just go back and have a look at that. It's bang on it. So that's why I don't want to trade short here. We're bang on this 109 level, if you like, or very close there to it. And it's probably going to take a little bit to get through that. And I'm not sure the end of the month is the accurate timing for that. It may be, but I'm not going to trust that. I think I'd rather see a bit of another attempt for this to crack through resistance before I went short again. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at there. If I look at, and I normally do this definitely this time of the month, I have a look at this chart, if I can actually find it. Hang on, I've got to go up here, haven't I? New share. That one. Or that one. I think. What screen can you see, Ash?
I can see Finviz.
Aha, that's right. That's how I noticed that Bitcoin was had done the big crash, because I never watched Bitcoin. But here's what I do like to look at the end of the month, and it's where we're tracking in terms of relative strength against the US dollar. And you can see that.
How do you use this, though, Jeff? I mean, this is something that I've been talking to people about with any kind of indication which is forward and lagging and So how do you use something like this? Is it? In fact, you tell me. But one question I would have is do you put more weight onto a week's relative performance, or a month's relative performance, or a 5 minute? Which way is best to use this in your opinion?
I look to combine the lot, right? So I'll use month to date, especially at this time because we've had a full month, right? And the month to date is telling me that the pound is the strongest currency against the US dollar, followed by the CAD, followed by the Aussie. Now the CAD's had a royal kick in the shins in the last little bit. Because of the oil price dropping. The Aussie, for whatever reason, is still strong against the US dollar over the month to date. So over this month, the Aussie against the US dollar is strong. Yet if I change timeframes here, you're going to see a different story, I think. You can see that the yen is the weakest currency this month. So we've been risk on. That's why we're seeing the CAD and the Aussie, and probably the pound to some extent, as strong currencies this month. So what I'd now be looking for with that information in hand is, well, has this retraced in the last week or so? Have these currencies retraced against the US dollar in the last week or so? And if they have, then I'll be looking for entries.
I see.
Off dips, right? If that's the case. So that's the immediate thing I see in my mind. I'm expecting if I go to the weekly charts, let's look at these three currencies. They're the strongest against the dollar, and certainly against the yen, and certainly against the Kiwi. So let's look at these three: pound, CAD, Aussie. I don't tend to trade the CAD, so let's look at the pound and the Aussie. And I'm not dismissing the CAD because it suits me, but I just haven't got a US dollar CAD chart up. So pound versus the dollar, Aussie versus the dollar. That's pretty easy to do. Pound versus the dollar. Strongest currency over the month. I'm looking at a 4-hour chart. Let's go to the weekly chart, see what we've got. So the month, let's put a line through the month. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So the month.
So I've still got FinViz up at the minute.
Oh, sorry, yeah, you've got to change charts, haven't you? Let's go here. This one, that one. Hopefully you've got my chart up of cable right now on the weekly. So the month began here-ish, and you can see how strong the pound has been against the dollar. Put in a kind of let's wait and see doji sitting there, and then last week we just smashed. Is that a retracement? Is the question I asked myself.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I see a 1.24% rise in the pound over the dollar over the month, then I think maybe yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I'm actually bullish the pound against the dollar right now. Based on that, doesn't mean I'm going to trade it, but that's the bias that I now have. Right. Pound over the dollar. Let's check the Aussie. Same story. So the Aussie over the month is 0.3. So not a great deal, not a lot of strength here, and you can see that. We rallied in the first half of the month, but we gave most of it back in the second half of the month, and now we're just wondering and wandering here as to what's going to happen next. I don't think I'd look to trade that at all based on that chart. But if I went to the pound, and that'll do me, I don't need to see any more. I'm just not going to trade it.
You wouldn't trade that because?
Because look at the price action.
Yeah.
It's up and down like, father's pants, as I used to say.
Yeah.
And it can't get away from the monthly pivot. Now, I don't see why it would do that today.
Yeah.
I don't have a reason to say, well, okay, we're going to trade the Aussie long or short. Although there's a technical setup, probably to trade in either direction if there's a breakout. But why would there be breakout? Is there a reason for there to be breakout? We've got Aussie interest rates tomorrow. Yep. I don't think so. I can see this staying exactly where it is. So I dismissed that straight away.
You gotcha.
The pound, on the other hand, has been very, very volatile for obvious reasons. If I go to the 4-hour chart, bearing in mind here that I'm bullish, I just need to look for a reason to get into the market. Whether I find one or not is probably another story, but let's go hunting and see what we see. We see a break, we see a retest. That's bearish for me. Well, it's not a bearish signal, but it's a bearish trade, I'll put it that way. But here comes the potential here, which would be re-break this trade line, so get back above it and then retest it from above. That gets me long.
Can I just give you one thing on this as well?
Sure.
When I drew my trend lines on this, because I was looking for to see if the pound could strengthen after it started to retrace somewhat. The flag for me was the bar. I think it was 8 o'clock on the 4th of September. I drew a trend line where your trend line starts. That's my second point, and I had one on the 4th of September. Yeah, I had that.
Yeah, I had that line as well last week.
Yeah.
And why I didn't find a way into that is beyond me. I don't know why I didn't, because I was extremely bearish this last week, as I said.
Oh, you were?
I thought the pound was a big sell last week. I really thought it was a good opportunity.
Tory conference this week, mate.
Oh yeah, and
just starting. Which if there's going to be anything that moves, maybe a currency, it could be from the pound with the Tory conference.
Yeah, I'd like to see what happens today. I think before I got into anything, because it's not dissimilar. We have gone in consolidation now.
It's
We're at a
interesting, really, mate.
situation.
But you saying you don't particularly like the end of the month combination with Monday. Is that because, in your experience, you don't see enough movement to take advantage of, or does it tend to be too much movement for you?
It's either or.
Oh, okay.
It's a bit like Asia session to me.
Yes.
And one of the reasons I don't trade Asia session is because it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
either goes and goes and goes, or it just sits there and does absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And the worst thing that I can possibly experience is sitting on a 30-minute chart waiting for 0.1 of a pip
Yeah.
every half hour.
Yeah. I know, it's horrible, isn't it?
That just drives me insane.
The evidence at this stage looks like it's going to be 0.1 of a pip every half an hour from what I'm looking at with the FTSE. I mean, things change. I've so many times I've caught myself saying, I can't see this getting out of this range, and then I sort of come out to the market later on, and it's absolutely yeah. So I can't say that I'm right on this any more than probably 50% of the time, but still,
and you can't tell. Well, sorry, that's not true. On a Monday, it's very difficult to tell. But if you've had something massive over the weekend, then the market's going to move. But
yes,
if you've had nothing over the weekend and you've got maybe something in the week ahead, we'll have NFP no doubt at the end of the week. We've got I don't know how many interest rate announcements. The Aussie always starts that out tomorrow.
Yeah, we got a couple. We got the States at the end of the month, and I think the UK as well, and Europe, EU is at the end of this month as well. End of the month, that's today. End of next month.
So that's kind of the reason, Monday and end of month doesn't do a lot for me.
No, and I can see. Oh, do you know the other thing I just remembered as well is that China goes on holiday tomorrow.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. Yeah, I think 2 weeks. Not sure what it's in aid of.
Okay.
I think it's 2 weeks.
It comes up in 4 months.
It might be. I don't know. It might be. It might be another. It might be a week. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure they go on holiday tomorrow, which could be a bit weird for the market. When I think about China being such an important moving part in what moves the FTSE right now, when a country effectively shuts down their stock exchange, for a period, what does that mean? What is that going to mean? Does that mean that we just kind of hit this sleepy kind of moment in the market, or does that mean that any kind of ramping up means that people are going to be gagging to kind of shut down their trades, or and I wouldn't be surprised if we get any kind of hint of bad news today. The China market will probably tank because everybody's just going to think, I don't want to be in this in 2 weeks' time.
You don't want to carry this for 2 weeks. That's right. Yeah.
That'd be my thinking. Anyway, but maybe I could be wrong on that. But yeah, so China are going to be hitting a break tomorrow. So maybe that's another reason we get some sleepy price action. Interesting with the pound. I mean, the knives are out for Boris. The knives are well and truly out. We knew they would be. Dominic Cummings, the aide that I was telling you about, who's masterminded quite a lot of the exits from the EU, has been pretty hideous. So I have to say, recently he's quite a hideous bloke, Dominic Cummings. He's not a very warm character, and he's quite arrogant. He's hyper intelligent, which is maybe where it comes from, but he's not particularly likable. If you and I wouldn't be down the pub with him, for example.
Oh, buggery, man.
We'd have him on the show, though. We'd have him on the show, but we wouldn't have a drink after. Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
No, just that could be something that moves the pound. Today we've had Boris Johnson's. I mean, it's like literally anything they can get on him. Groping a reporter, a journalist, 20 years ago. We've had him giving money to an American lady who doesn't even have a company in the UK, when he was London mayor, and they reckon that was down to sexual relations as well. Well, whether they reckon it is or not, that's what they're intimating. They're trying their best political tactics to muddy his name. But
they put that together with Randy Andy. He's the same bloke, same shoe, or what?
Who's Randy Andy?
Prince Andrew.
Oh gosh, no, not the same, not the same, not Weinstein, not Weinstein, was it Weinstein with Randy Andy?
I can't remember his name. Edelstein, was it?
Epstein. Yeah, no, not the same dude.
He's no longer with us.
No, I mean, there's loads of them. The fact that they're all at it is something, but it's the fact that the opposition are digging up things to do with that, because that's the only thing they have that may actually knock him from his perch. Because it does astonish me, mate. Boris Johnson is incredibly popular, and I do find it a bit crazy, because so far I've heard nothing but populist rhetoric. I haven't heard anything when it comes down to policy that you could really grab onto. He was meant to be this great kind of blonde savior of the UK and of the Brexit negotiations and of Brexit itself. But I just still don't get it. I'm yet to kind of like catch up with the euphoria that follows Boris Johnson, and it's not that I dislike him, because I don't actually. I find him incredibly compelling, and he is quite amusing, but that doesn't make him a good leader, and it doesn't make him good at decision making, and it doesn't mean that he's going to do the best for the country. And I was of the thinking, because he's such a career politician, I was of the thinking that it doesn't matter that he's doing this all for him, because the hope would be that the UK would get kind of drawn along with him trying to do the best for him. We'd have the best done for our, the country as well. But I just don't see his skill. I don't see where his skill lies.
Well, neither does anyone else at the moment, because it hasn't certainly come to the fore. That's
he's 13. He's 13 points above the opposition in the polls, and this is the concern. Is that it doesn't matter what they do. And this is what I'm saying about all this, they're mudslinging now. They're just like, what else can we do? Let's just do some mudslinging. It's a bit like Trump, actually. But a bit like what Trump says. And whether I'm not saying I agree with this, but Trump says they can't get me. So now they're trying to impeach me on this thing. They can't beat me in the polls. So they're going to try and impeach me and that's probably not true, but it's a bit like that with it feels a bit like that with UK politics. They don't know how they're going to get him. So they're just going to go for the sex scandal instead. I mean, everybody knows that Boris Johnson is, he's to use your term, his trousers are up and down more times than a bamboo farmer.
He's a pants man, in other words.
Yeah,
that's the old expression.
Yeah, so
and that's no disrespect intended to anybody. That's just a term.
Yeah, but everybody knows that about him. So it's not really mudslinging. You know what I mean? It's like sort of like going. It's like saying to somebody who's just had a big blob of ice cream shoved in their face, going dirty, whatever, or messy. So they'll be like, yeah. So what's the news? Just on an ice cream.
Yeah, tell me something I don't know.
Yeah. So I don't know. But anyway, the headline to do with it is opposition leaders to meet again to discuss stopping no deal and Joe Swinson's plan for another extension. The extension is one of the key aspects, because Boris Johnson legally is meant to ask for an extension. However, there are reports that they have found a way round not having an extension, and it's still being legal. So there are twists and turns yet to come. When do you trade the pound, mate? When do you trade the pound?
Yeah, indeed. Well, you trade it after you see that. And I mean, we've spoken about that for the last couple of weeks. That's three little Indians for me. And if you see that breaking out the top of a range, three false breaks in a row, and you get something like this, you just jump into the market right there on that lower high, because it's going to break. Would I say 100% of the time impossible? But gee whiz, this is a very high probability trade. If you see those three breakouts that are all false, and then you get a lower high on the back of that, the previous high, and a lower low precedes it, man, you're looking for a breakout short. And exactly the same can be said for the going the opposite direction. The pound is a beauty at this. It does it very, very well. In fact, it's done it in the last couple of months. There was another one. Where's my pen? There was another one here.
When you were just interested about you labeling that the Three Little Indians.
Well, they're my Three Little Indians. I don't know about anybody else's. Yeah.
But they're yours because they create three consecutive
false breaks. Yes.
False breaks. Okay, I see.
And so better still, if they're all higher highs.
Gotcha.
So if you're going the other way, if you've got break here,
yeah,
another break here, another break here,
yeah,
it's exactly the same scenario.
Yes. Yeah.
You want to trade the break of that neckline or consolidation pattern.
The first one is
you got to wait for the higher low.
Does the first one not create the support line that you're after?
Yeah, it can. It absolutely can. It can be either.
Okay.
In this case, it has, right?
Yeah.
It's created the resistance line, certainly.
Yeah.
The first dip after that's created the base of the consolidation period. But gee, I love this. Every time I see this, I call it, and it's done me very, very proud.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because just as my eye gets drawn to kind of the Head and Shoulders, your eye probably gets drawn to the Three Little Indians, just as you said there. I'm just trying to have a look at your chart there. That's a 4 hour on the pound.
That's a 4. Yes.
Do you know I was saying about the about gold, and I drew the trend line for gold to find that right shoulder.
Yep.
I mean, if you look at this one as well, if you look at putting a trend line from midday on the 17th through to the 19th.
You mean there?
Yeah, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Right shoulder.
Up, doesn't it? Didn't we discuss this last week?
I don't know, mate. I don't know, but that's exactly the same, isn't it? It's another right shoulder and another right shoulder, which is broken through and can return to a trend line, which is a pattern within a pattern. I mean, you can't really get a higher probability trade with a Head and Shoulders. You could look for the Head and Shoulders that do that. They probably don't appear very often, but if you look for the ones that do that, you're much more likely to get a positive outcome.
Well, they don't happen that often. The reason they don't happen that often is that generally they're the beginning of a reversal.
Yeah.
So, you may have a long trend, but, the same counts for, 2-week rally or something like that. The key for me is coming back off that last high and then being unable to get there and unable to get through the trend line and unable to get through the top of the range. It's just a gold pattern, really. And I'll look for it all the time. Unfortunately, I wish it occurred once a week. I wouldn't have to do anything else.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Once a week would be quite useful, wouldn't
it? Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll have some of
that. So where am I at, Ash? It's Monday of the last day of the month.
You're kind of you're well Geldof today, I think I'd say.
Yep. True story. There's another little interesting scenario right there where we've broken through the neckline, if you like, and now we've come back to retest it. But it's very shallow. It's nothing there that really interests me. I was very interested in Aussie yen last week, as you know, to get back into it. Was this a case in point? I think it was actually. Okay, just what we've been talking about. Let me go back and have a look at that. Where I got into this move up here. Get rid of this. How do I get rid of this, Ash? There. Not quite a Three Little Indian setup there. They're not far from it. Probably looks okay on an hourly chart. Yeah, kind of. 1, 2, 3. False breaks down, and away she goes. Same thing. But I didn't trade that on an hourly chart. I traded on a 4-hourly chart and got in this vicinity. It may have been that candle I traded, because I may have been, no, it wouldn't have been that too late in the day for me. No, it would have been the next day. Okay, yep, that would have been it. And we got all bar just the last little bit of that trade. And then we trusted it to get back in again and sat in that trade for 3 or 4 days. And I said, no, I'm out of here. And that turned out to be a good call. But I do see now a nice double top sitting on that weekly pivot. But I also see a whole lot of garbage here. So that's enough to keep me out today as well. So, yeah, look, I've got no intention of trading, Ash. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, no, that's fine, mate. That's fine. Well, the any FTSE traders, you may well be getting close to being put into your trade. Maybe a few pips off that. Let's just have a quick look. Well, we'll be back later anyway, won't we, mate, to see how things did establish themselves. I'm going to give everybody some numbers here because I've got the UK chart up. So you are looking for, and this price hasn't been taken out yet, so you are looking for an entry at 74.16 with a stop at 74, I'd say 44, let's go with. You could go with 46 if you want just a nice simple 30.
Just share your chart, mate.
Oh, sure. What's going on there? Okay. So we are looking for the low of this bar here, this green bar here. I'd want that penetrated. So the low of that one is 74.16. So let me put in a. Actually, I will do it like this for you. That's your entry. And your stop is going to be above this point here, effectively. So that it's going to be above this high rather than this one, which looks slightly lower. It's going to be above this high because it's just they're just too close, and there's no point in going above something which isn't the actual high when the actual high is close enough. So this is going to lead you to around. This is the high here is 74.40. So 74.44, 74.42. You know, you're going to have to take into account obviously some of the spread. So you know, and let's say 74.44. So looking at entry at 74.16 and stop 74.44. And when it comes down to kind of take profit areas, I just wouldn't bother. I wouldn't take profit on this one. I would see how far you can let it run, rather than playing it in any way, shape, or form. Because there's this to me looks like an area that could really collapse, and it'd be such a shame to trade this one, get into a trade where you may well be picking a monthly high. And then start taking little bits of profit, like 30 pips down or something. So I would see how it established itself. You know, when it comes down to when you're taking profit on something like this, if it starts to collapse, then the idea would just move your stops. You know, every single time you see the high, probably on an hourly chart, just get your stops just above and allow the trend to kind of like dictate where and how much money you make, rather than kind of aiming for something. Because yeah, you could aim here, you could aim down here, you know, or there are sort of like levels of support where you could look for taking profit, but I just wouldn't bother with something like this. I'm going to show you exactly why, and it's because I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this on a monthly chart, and I'm just saying to myself, well, if we are going to get a trade in this area, this is a potential high. By the time this really starts to kind of like move next month, it could be all the way down here. So if we're starting to take profit in any areas, you know, at the highs, then we're potentially losing out on a really good trade. And I suspect a lot of people listening aren't probably FTSE traders. So why not just let it go? You just leave it, let it run. When you're looking to move your stops, make sure they're wide. So make sure that you're looking at a longer term time frame, i.e. the 4-hour chart. See if this one starts to break down. Let it come back up and collapse, and then move a stop. Because really we're aiming all the way down here. If you want to take profit, then we're looking at 70, you know, down to 70, 50 or something. We're looking at hitting the home run with something like this because of the position of the monthly bars here, the monthly price action. So yeah. That's the plan, mate. Just let it go. Obviously, it depends on your it depends on your style. So if all of a sudden price kind of starts to come down and collapse down to somewhere, if I can get why can't I get that sorted there? Yeah, let's say price starts to collapse down here, and then, you know, we're at the Chinese American Trade Summit, and there's a deal. Then obviously you're going to close out. You know, it's not just kind of like, you know, blind, yeah, let it run and see what happens. It really is kind of like making sure that you're aware of what might drive it. And if it appears all of a sudden that the market is going to be saved and rescued, then close up. But if, you know, if it's kind of like if it's rhetoric which is fairly innocuous, then I would let it run and see if you can get it all the way down here.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, that's the plan, mate. Okay, so we'll be back later on, won't we? We'll be back at
yep. The original show with Julian heading off today because they're now changed daylight saving, and it'll be kind of 11 p.m. when we start that show in New Zealand. So
what does that mean for us? I mean, is that 3 hours away? Is it?
No, still 2.
Still 2 hours. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's always going to be Singapore, Hong Kong time, which was 8 p.m.
8 p.m.
Oh, sorry.
6
p.m.
6 p.m. Singapore. Okay. All right, great. All right, sounds good. In that case, mate, I'll speak to you in a couple of hours. And everybody else, if you're in that show, speak to you in a couple of hours. If not, we'll be back same trade time, same trade channel tomorrow.
What time is that, mate?
5 to 8 it's going to be.
You beauty. Don't be late. That's a date.
See you later, guys.